Hello, hello. I just wanted to do a quick video overview to kind of show you some of the structures in our class and help explain the grading policy, which I think some parents are still confused about. I try to be pretty good about, including a lot of detail in the emails, but I guess uh, folks aren't quite inclined to read those emails, which is all right as well. So our class layout, um, this is a typical topic. Sorry not for not scrolling to the top. I have student names there. But at the beginning of every topic, I always have the calendar. And if you click on that calendar, it'll take you here, which shows you the office hours that are available after school. I'm always available every day during lunch, but after school it shows the office hours because those can be variable. And it also includes guided notes for each lesson that we do. So when we do work at the boards, your students can always click on these and see, what were the announcements of the day, right? So I always put those up and talk them through. They'll see whatever warm up we covered, where usually I'm trying to talk about previous knowledge that we had, or if we do an exit ticket that isn't, working out very well for the kids, I'll recover that exit ticket with them, practice it with them. All right, and then we'll usually start doing some group tasks. Now, this is where I think a lot of kids aren't quite construing to their parents what's happening with these tasks. So normally in a classroom, there's you know, a teacher, they do an example, and then they'll ask the students to try an example, and then they bring it together, and as a whole group, they'll discuss that example. And then they'll do another example. They'll have the kids try an example in their notebook, and then they bring it together and they try that example again, whole group. So that idea is still the same structure in our class. The only difference to it is that instead of having them try the question individually in their notebook, I have them try it as a group of 3 at a vertical board. Now, while they're working at the boards, I'm not sitting in some corner grading or something like that. What I'm doing is I'm watching the boards, and then when I see that a group is struggling, I go to the board and I give them insight, or I help kind of drag them in the right direction. If I see that some students have finished before others, I'll ask them, did you get the same answer as the groups around you? Have you checked your answers together? So once I've seen that the majority of boards have finished, right? Usually I make sure all the boards have finished, but sometimes if I see that someone's just really astray, I'll pull us all together at the end of the example and I'll do the example in front of the kids. So they get to try it on their own, which they would normally be doing in a notebook, but now they're doing it with a group of peers so that they could discuss things. And then they're getting guidance, and then I bring it together and we talk about it as a group. Then we'll try another. And if there was a group that I saw that was struggling, generally I'll kind of hover in that area and see if our whole group discussion helped them or if they need more like clearance or guidance. And so because we're doing a lot of this on the vertical boards, which can be erased, I go through and I actually put our annotated examples and I try to color code them to help kids understand it when they're looking at it later. All right. I organize them. The red here is mild questions. The blue here is medium questions, and then the green here is spicy questions. All right, we also include some vocabulary if they need it. And then I also solve through their exit tickets. So when I hand your student back their exit tickets, if they need to, they could go onto their, Google Classroom. They can look at this exit ticket that's worked out and they can actually compare it and see, oh, did I just make a small mistake? Because often I leave little comments. Or is it a more major mistake that maybe they might need to ask questions about? So also in this calendar, if they scroll all the way to the bottom, I have videos of almost every example that we cover. I made these during COVID, so the starting ones are a little rough and then they get better, over time. Uh, these videos are also shared at the bottom of Google Classroom in the RHS Math Resource website. So Miss Outerkirk and I team together, and she has my videos, but she also has any supplements for anything I might have missed. All right, and so those are available to your students at all times, just in case they're studying later on and they need, a little extra support or they need to see something, but they're not able to come to office hours, which is understandable. All right. Also underneath the calendar, I have this graphic organizer. So at the start of every unit, I give your students this organizer. All right. It has sections for vocabulary. It has some key features. Some of them we do together to fill out. So, for example, this one I did on the board with the kids, and they filled it out and used it to help guide them. All right. But they can put whatever examples they want in here. This transformation section, for example, was from a guided notes that we did in class that they just had to copy over. And they can use these on their quizzes to help them. They can't use it on the exam, but on quizzes they can. In fact, 20% of their quiz grade is, did they fill in the boxes for the standards that were on that quiz? And usually when I'm teaching or lecturing, when we get to the spicy level question, because usually, that's the grade level standard where we need to get to, I'll remind them or I'll pause the class and say, hey, we should write this example down. In Algebra 2, for example, I actually gave them a little bit of time before their quiz. I gave them 15 minutes before their quiz and said, hey, if you haven't filled in your notes sheet, the written notes are all on Google Classroom. Pull it up real quick, fill out your notes sheet. And 20% of their quiz grade is, did they fill in those boxes? Alrighty, that was the calendar. So then talking about the grading part. So usually we do our grades through exit tickets. So this is a sample student, all right? And each of these boxes is a question. So on an exit ticket, I will try to generally ask them 3, maybe 4 questions. It kind of depends on the length of the questions. So for example, in Algebra 1, our first exit ticket was one-step equations. So yeah, I gave them 6 of those. With 10 minutes, one-step equations, they should be able to finish that in time. And so what we do is I mark their questions based off the difficulty level, basic being 60%, intermediate being 80%, and advanced, which is the grade level material, is at 100%. And I take the average of their top 2 scores. Okay, so the reason why I do that is because as students are seeing the material, as we're recovering material, because I do a lot of reteaching through those warm-ups, they continue to learn, they continue to grow. They might have come to office hours to ask questions. They might have just kind of clicked in doing their corrections for their retake or something like that. And so I give them the opportunity to try to prove to me that they know the material. And I'm not penalizing them for previous material that they haven't learned. So take, for example, this section here. All right, so this kid kind of struggled in the beginning, it looks like, with the basic ones. They got one incorrect, which is what the X is, and they made a small mistake on one. Okay, then they did it perfectly, so they moved on to the intermediate level. All right, so they went a little more difficult, which is just slightly under grade level. Remember, 2 intermediate questions would get them an 80% if they got them right, but they were making small mistakes on that. So in this lesson, we actually did guided notes. So this student, this theoretical student, would have, gone through the guided notes, and now they're getting the advanced. They're making sense out of it. So instead of penalizing them for all these previous attempts, I take the average of the top 2 so that I'm grading them based off of that mastery of their concept. So sometimes kids aren't doing their exit tickets. So there's supposed to be an in there. So when they're not doing their exit ticket, you'll see a lot of red in here. That means that they didn't attempt that question. So sometimes, is the exit ticket time not quite enough for them? That happens. Sometimes you need to work a little slower on something. Something's not quite sticking through. So occasional ends, they happen. Sometimes we're just having a bad day. But if you're seeing a lot of ends, that's a sign that your student isn't completing their exit tickets and they're not trying the questions. Remember, a try on a question is, are they getting to an answer? If it's a 5-step problem and they attempt 1 step out of the 5, that's not really an attempt. That's kind of playing with it. So they need to get to an answer in order to get the X. All right? Again, the S is for a small mistake. The C means check mark, it's perfect. On this example, these ABSs stand for absence. So you could also see if your kids' absences are happening with these exit tickets. So if I were to try to analyze, for example, their 1C progress here, they had a basic one that they never tried, and then it looks like they were absent, and then when we relearned it, they tried it but they didn't quite understand it. That probably has to do with the absences and not trying it in the first place. So you can kind of see how it builds out. Now, if this student were to go through and actually, try things, they did pretty good with the equations, maybe they go back and look at the graphical stuff, they could easily make up those scores by just answering 2 questions. So I do that for my students who do have like a little bit of time at home. So for example, my marching band kids who are here after school every single day, or my sports kids who might have games, or all the other little things that we do in life. Some of my kids, I have juniors, so they have jobs. So instead of having a bunch of makeup work that kids would have to do, it's, hey, do 2 questions and come explain them to me. And you can make up that practice grade with just 2 questions and a quick explanation. I try to give, time in class if possible. So for example, in Algebra 2, I gave 3 days of class time before our most recent exam for kids to do their review, to do quiz corrections or retakes if they need it, and to ask questions or get clarification. Algebra 1, our unit's a little more spread out, so I've been able to, do a lot of reteaches and reassessment through exit tickets. But I did give them another day, I believe it was the Friday that we had the power outage, for them to take advantage of, are there check your understanding questions that you've been doing that you want to turn in? Are there corrections on your retake that you want to do? So I've been giving class time for students to make up their grades, to get one-on-one help if they need it. They just need to take advantage of that as well. So another concern was about quiz retakes. So with both classes, Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, oh, by the way, those check your understanding questions, they're linked right there in Google Classroom. And there's lots of them for them to choose from. They could just pick 1 or 2. Sorry. So with the quiz retakes, the reason why we have them do corrections on the quiz retakes is so that they can get clarification, and when they retake it, they're not making the same mistakes. So I've done quiz corrections as a requirement for retakes for most of the 11 years I've been teaching. So what I have found is when I have stopped doing that requirement, when I've stepped back and said, okay, so just don't have any missing work or something like that, then when they go to retake their quiz, they don't take it as seriously, and usually they score worse. So the point of them doing the corrections is so that they can get clarification. They can ask me questions. Hey, am I doing this right? Hey, oh, I just missed this sign here. That was my mistake. So those corrections are giving them a chance to see what's on the quiz, what can they anticipate might be their mistake, and how can they do better the next time. So I know that it's frustrating that the, quiz correction is not improving their grade, but the retake will if they take those corrections seriously and get the help that they might need. The other thing is with assessments, right? Exams are a little different than quizzes. In both classes, neither group can use their notes on exams. So it's just, what do you know? For some exams, we do have formulas that we write on the board. So for example, with Algebra 2, they had the slope formula and they had the transformations formula written on the boards. I made sure to put them around the room so that if kids are taking their exam, they could try to solve it. Algebra 1 hasn't had their first exam yet, but they don't really have any formulas that I'm aware of in this unit. But on their exams and on their quizzes, if they show work on every single question, which I tell them when they take their quiz, I'll hand it out and I remind them, hey, if you guys attempt every single question, you show some kind of written response, then you get a minimum of a 40%. So if your student's scoring less than a 40% on their exams or their quizzes, they're not trying every question. And honestly, that's going to be a big part of their grade. Alrighty, so this is kind of a long video already for 15 minutes, so I'm going to stop here. But as always, if ever you need any help or any clarification, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.